In order to have an equitable classroom, we first must know what the word equity means. So, what is equity? According to an unspecified author from wgu.edu, equity is the pursuit of creating an educational system that caters to students of all kinds and develops their educational experience accordingly. This means that no matter what a student's background, language, race, economic profile, gender, learning capability, disability, or family history, each student has the opportunity to get the support and resources they need to achieve their educational goals. Some may be wondering, why is this important? For those wondering, I would like to give you a little analogy to hopefully open up your mind. Picture two bags of popcorn. Both have the same ingredients. Both have the same bag. However, one bag has a slight tear in it. You put both bags of popcorn in the microwave for 2 minutes. The bag without the tear is perfectly popped by the end of the 2 minutes, but the one with the tear isn't fully done. Are you going to give up on that bag of popcorn? The answer is no. So what do? You find a solution and decide to microwave that popcorn a little bit longer. Now that bag is perfectly popped and you have two equally delicious bags of popcorn. Now I want you to replace the bags of popcorn with children. Say you have a child who speaks English as their first language and another student who speaks Spanish as their first language. The English-speaking student gets an English written homework assignment to take home and practice. You give the Spanish-speaking student the same English written homework assignment to take home and practice. Both students turn in their homework the next day. You discover that the English-speaking student did far better than the Spanish-speaking student. Why do you think that is? It's not because the Spanish-speaking student didn't try hard enough. In fact, they probably stayed up all night trying this assignment. It's because you gave an English written assignment to somebody who doesn't speak English and expected them to do just as well as the English-speaking student. Now, you may be wondering, but don't you want to give each student the same thing to make it equal? While equality means giving everybody equal things and treating everybody equally, it does not make something equitable. Yes, you treated both students equally in the sense that you gave both students the same assignment and had them turn them in at the same time, but you didn't provide equity in that situation. So how can we make that situation equitable? Let's go back to the main factors. You have two students, one Spanish speaking and one English speaking. You have a homework assignment to give each student that is due the next day. Since the assignment is written in English, it is your job to find a way for your Spanish speaking student to understand the assignment just as well as your English student. In this situation, you would find a Spanish written copy to give to your Spanish speaking student. This way, you are giving each student what they need to perform their best. Unfortunately, many people think that bringing equality in their classroom is the same as providing equity to their classroom. Because of this, many dark students lose their chance at getting a fair school experience and end up getting lower grades. Since teachers think they are giving equal opportunities to their students, they look past the fact that it's not themselves that are causing this to happen and believe it is because race, and they continue to give unjust treatment to students of color. According to the author of We Want to Do More Than Survive, the achievement gap is not about white students outperforming dark students. It is about a history of injustice and oppression, excuse me. It is about the educational debt that has accumulated over time in the educational survival complex. It is important to remember that our future students' education is not just an analogy. There are many principles that we must understand in order to change and transform the education system into an equitable one. Here are a few. It is so important to first understand and recognize that every student is different. If you do not recognize students' differences, you cannot give them an equitable education. One way to understand students' differences would be to have regular meetings with each student and their caregivers. While children tend to tell people everything, there could still be a lot going on behind the scenes that we as educators don't know about. By establishing a relationship with each student and their caregivers individually, you can get to know certain things that may be triggers or things that may work best for each student when it comes to learning and or opening up. You may also learn more about your students' culture and identity. In Chapter 3 of Indigenous Children's Survivance in Public Schools, they wrote, aspects students may feel are important to their identities, their citizenship as a nation, a language spoken, a story they have been told or retell, a connection to land, are not always visible to the ways settler societies imagines indigeneity to be expressed. These regular meetings give your students and their families a chance to express aspects of their lives that they may feel otherwise unable to express. You may have come to the challenge of being unable to meet with a student's caregiver due to multiple reasons like schedule conflicts, illness, or being able to find a correct translator. If that is the case, you can find many ways to alter these meetings, like having them over Zoom, finding times to email back and forth with translations. If the student's caregivers are unwilling to have meetings, you can always make weekly individual meetings with just the students during lunches or free time. Any individual time with the student is important. Another way to understand students' differences is to give each student the freedom to make their own choices when it comes to things like how they learn. For example, perhaps instead of giving one homework assignment that every student needs to do, try giving 2 or 3 different homework options and let your students choose which one they want to do. It is important to understand that every person learns differently. Some people are visual, some are hands-on, and some are by the book. Giving your student the opportunity to learn in the way they want to learn best not only gives them a higher chance at equitable learning, but it also gives them a chance to learn how to make their own decisions for their own gain. Another important principle when it comes to bringing equity into your classroom is to recognize that as an educator, you must learn about the different cultures, including the hard and true reality of America's history. One way to learn these things is to study. As an adult who has gone through college, you know how to find the accurate and genuine sources and how to weed out inaccurate and false accusations. The biggest example would be Christopher Columbus. As a child in America, you most likely learned that Christopher Columbus found America and that the Native Americans gave us their land. As an adult, you most likely learned that that is far from the truth and that Christopher Columbus and all the other white people brutally stole the land from Native Americans and slain many of them in the process. Because of this, many Native American children feel unjust in the classroom because they know the truth and can't explain or show their feelings without feeling wrong or judged. Unfortunately, that is how it is for many other parts of history and cultures as we've learned it. So in order to provide an accurate depiction of our multicultural students' living lives and upbringing, we must learn and teach the truth. On page 94 of the book, What Does Justice Look Like? They said, the denial of humanity to Minnesotans' original people is a burden carried by all Minnesotans. Telling the truth allows us to relive those burdens and take the next step towards justice. Only once we learn and teach the truth can we provide true equity. Another way you can learn this principle is to ask your students questions. Allow your students to talk about their culture. Encourage them to talk about it. Let them know that you are just as interested in their culture as you are your own. This is a great way to get your students to open up and feel more confident. When a child feels confident, they usually feel more confident to ask questions. This is also a great way to learn where your student may be struggling or exceeding academically. A quote that really resonated with me for this principle was from chapter 5 of We Want to Do More Than Survive. When they wrote, teachers who understand Black joy enter the classroom knowing that dark students knowing their history, falling in love with their history, and finding their voice are more important than grades. Good grades do not equal joy. Black joy is knowing that you are more than your trauma while understanding that healing from trauma is a process. One more principle that I will be talking about today, though there are plenty more, is avoiding disconscious racism. Quoted from the book, We Want to Do More Than Survive. Disconscious racism is practiced by teachers who want to celebrate diversity with holidays, food, and cultural artifacts, but never challenge their assumptions about dark people and how whiteness is reproduced by their advantage. Disconscious racists are the folks who say, I don't see color, denying their students racial experiences, cultural heritage, and ways of resistance. Color blindness is racist. While bringing things from other cultures into the classroom is great, you want to make sure that you don't just have artifacts from other cultures or a book here and there. Have the same amount of books about Native American culture as you do Italian culture and as you do Haitian culture, and so on and so forth. You definitely never want one student to feel like their culture isn't important while others are. Another way to make sure you do not practice disconscious racism in your classroom is to do more research. Seriously, you can never research too much when it comes to other people's lives and feelings. If you are unsure about the way you are doing something or the way you are introducing multiple cultures into your classroom, ask a trusted friend or colleague who has a different culture than you and see what they think about your idea. It is important to put other people's perspectives into your work, especially if you're white. From the same book, We Want to Do More Than Survive, they said, you theorize it while some people live it. This incredibly short quote speaks 1,000 words. As a white person, you need to understand that you can learn so much about a culture, but you will never fully understand it because you have not lived it. Getting the input from somebody who has lived it is highly important when it comes to having equity in your classroom. To conclude, we learned that equity is not the same as equality. We learned that why equity is important in the classroom. And we learned 3 principles to follow when it comes to bringing equity into the classroom. 1, every student is different. You need to know that. 2, as a teacher, you must learn this is not on your students to bring their cultures into your classroom. You need to bring their cultures in and encourage them to be themselves. And 3, avoid disconscious racism. This is something that many white people do, and it's up to you to make sure that you do not do it. These are my references.